is not lost. Know you are missed and that you matter. We come together today via Zoom because we care. We are finding ways to interact and to build connections. So take this opportunity to use chat, especially in this service. Call us, write us, talk to us. Interactions are important to your well-being. Call a friend on the phone. Hug yourself because you matter. Our volunteers today in the sanctuary are 5 people besides myself. Warren and Becky and Mary's here. And so, okay. I want to thank all of them. And I want to thank Annette, who is being our Zoom stage manager, who helps acknowledge the folks that are on Zoom. And we have 18 people. Yay. The Zoom chat box is available for announcements. Those who prefer to focus on the service can close it and catch up later. We have a few church announcements. I haven't gotten any other ones, so let me tell you what I do have. We're going to continue to change the closing sequence after the service. So I'll close the formal service. Recording will stop after that, after the covenant, and we'll move on to joys and concerns and to conversation time. Your feedback to the worship committee on this change is definitely most welcome. Please be sure to check out the UUFF for opportunities to join us, such as the social drop-in on Wednesday at 5, or the game nights at Saturday at 7 p.m. They use this same Zoom. Be sure to check the UUFF for COVID updates. As the cases rise in our region, so does the risk. So we are still being careful. In fact, I do believe we may be moving to just Zoom here soon. I'm not sure. And we won't be singing in the sanctuary. We will be singing in our heads, humming. So is there anybody else who has any UU related, church related announcements? Annette, will you check?
Anybody on Zoom that has a church related announcement, please go ahead and unmute yourself and tell us your announcement. So, doesn't look like it. Carry on.
Our fellowship is a light for liberal religion in the mountains that values the diversity and the richness that it brings to our community. Our celebrations of diversity are reflected in the variety of our Sunday services, and we hope today's service will enrich your journey. My opening words. A few years ago, I applied for a job at Haywood Community College for a higher ranking job, and they asked me to provide my philosophy of the importance of a community college. I didn't get the job. I didn't even get an interview, but I later realized that the basis of that statement were also the basis of the philosophy I have on the importance of libraries. I want to share some of that philosophy with you today in our opening words. And here we go. At their hearts, librarians collect and libraries collect and share stories. Humans are great storytellers over the ages. We understand the power of a good story. I'm fascinated about the stories we tell. We're just wired to create, collect, and share our stories. We tell stories about ourselves, our families, our experience, our community, and even our country. Stories tell us about our history, about our hard work, the obstacles we have overcome, about the pride we have in our accomplishments, and the lessons we've learned from our failures. But more importantly, stories inspire us. They allow us to use our imagination to create, modify, and improve the world around us. A good story can change the world. It can make it better. Good libraries help our communities by supporting their users with the knowledge and the tools to collect, maintain, share, and most importantly, in educational environments, to change our own stories. Good libraries create the multicultural environments that is welcoming and supportive, regardless of one's background, ethnicity, age, social and economic status, or sexual orientation. Each of us have a compelling story about how we got to the place we are. We want to see our stories reflected in the materials we access, in the staff that support our search as we find the information we need. We all come to the library with different needs and abilities as we journey down the path of our educational experiences. Good libraries support a patron regardless of who they are, the complexity of the knowledge they're looking at, or the subjects they explore. Great libraries inspire their patrons to share their stories with each other to create a community of sharing. For my chalice lighting, although as I light this chalice, its light seems far away from you, but know that it burns in our beloved sanctuary here in Franklin. You know that it burns in this place. You know this place. You've supported this place. You've cleaned this place. You've cooked in this place. You've sung in this place. You've stood there. You've ridden the elevator downstairs to Celebration Hall. This lighting means that we as a sanctuary are still alive, still trying to shine the light of our faith. As you see the light through the computer screen, you bear witness that we pledge ourselves in our community to be the bearers of this light to others, even though we only see it on the computer screen. Know that it's happening in our hearts and for real today in this sacred place at UUFF. And now the opening hymn.
Stirrings of compassion,
Thank you. We come to this place because we love what we've created here. This fellowship is a living entity, and like all living entities, it must be nurtured and sustained. Its breath and its heartbeat are you. Only can be derived from the living elements. That's you. And your offerings make this possible. Think about this today as our offertory song is being played. Your offerings will be received in love.
We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. A land of many colors. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. An anti-nuclear people. We are an anti-nuclear people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are an anti-nuclear people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. Young and old together. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. And hum a chorus with us. A gentle, loving people. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
In dedicating our gifts, let me say that gifts given in love and hope continue the cycle of love and hope. So may it be. In 1987, the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association, established the Common Vision Planning Committee, a diverse group of clergy and lay-led from around North American continent, and they were tasked with collecting information about how welcoming and accepting gay, lesbian, and bisexual people felt in the UU congregations around the country. Although UUA had been on record since the 1970s as supporting the rights and the worths of lesbian, gay, and bisexual people, the living experience of these people in the UU congregations spoke a different painful truth. The committee published a report that exposed many of the negative attitudes, deep prejudice, and profound ignorance about bisexuals, gay, and lesbian people, which resulted in the exclusion of them from the UU congregations around America. This reality troubled many people who were committed to make the UU congregations welcoming and exclusive places for all people, especially minority groups that are traditionally experience these kinds of exclusions, misrepresentations, and discriminations within our society. Citing the UU principles, especially the one that affirms the inherent worth and dignity of every person, the 1989 General Assembly voted to initiate the Welcoming Congregation Program recommended by this planning committee. In order for a congregation to be recognized as UUA, from UUA as a welcoming congregation, it had to go through the Welcoming Congregation Program. These requirements for recognition have two basic components. One, they have measurable accomplishments in the area of education, congregational life, community outreach, and using the guidelines as a guide. The second was a congregational vote for affirmation about being recognized in the UUA as a welcoming congregation. I would like to introduce our two speakers today. Hopefully they are both on the line. I can't see them, so please let me know. Travis Roundtree is an associate professor at Western Carolina University. He teaches first-year composition and graduate courses in composition and, what was it?
Rhetoric.
My research interests, his research interests are archival research, Appalachian place pedagogy, and public memory studies. He hails from Richmond, Virginia, but he lives in Silva. He enjoys running, weightlifting, gardening, and is an avid fan of old-fashioned, old-time bluegrass and country music. And Sarah Steiner, who is a colleague of mine at the library at Western Carolina University. She chairs the Research and Instruction Resources Services Department, among other things. She lives in Dillsboro with her family since 2014. Her efforts to establish an LGBTQ archive at Western Carolina University is her first work within the Archives and Special Collections department. They will be delivering our talk today about the WNC LGBTQ oral history projects. I want us to welcome them. They're on Zoom.
We're here. Thank you so much, Jill. So we're very excited to chat with you all today. We're really jazzed to be invited to come talk about this project because it's, I think we both find it really inspiring and incredible, and we hope that you will too. Travis, do you want to say anything to start off before?
I'd just like to say, can y'all hear me okay? Okay. Yeah, I'd just like to thank you all for having us. This is an amazing opportunity to talk more with the community. And also, it's kind of great. I'm in my living room, and it's great to see such an inclusive church in the area too. So I've only been here about 3 years, so this is really like refreshing and confirming, and yeah, it just like warms my little gay heart. So thank y'all.
Yeah, we really appreciate y'all.
Mhm.
And appreciate the invitation.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're going to start off. We have a few points we're going to cover today. So we're going to tell you a little bit about the archive and what's in there and kind of the different stories that have come to be represented We're going to talk a little bit about our aims and sort of the outcomes of it and why we think this is such important work. And share a little bit of information. If you feel inspired to help or contribute, there are lots of ways you can do it. So we'll give you some ideas with that. We'd love to interview you if you haven't been interviewed yet. Jill already spoke with us, which was awesome. We'd love to do interviews with anyone and everyone in the sort of regional community, sort of west of Asheville, because they're pretty well covered, but we need to be represented as well. Yeah, so let's start off. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you if I can figure this out in a relatively. Jill or Annette, it won't let me share quite yet, so I'm going to pause and chat and check back in just a second. So this archive was something that I started thinking about in 2018, but at the time I did not conceptualize it as being nearly so large. I was actually just having a period of burnout at work, and I was like, what would be really fun and awesome for me to do? I'm going to do some oral histories, because Western Carolina University has got a really robust oral history collection already with local African American people, folks from all around talking on different topics, but there really wasn't any LGBTQ representation. So I started doing that, and it was just a little thing I was doing on the side for fun. And then Travis moved here, and a friend of mine was like, you have to meet Travis. He does a project just like this. And Travis is never tired. Travis is a powerhouse of a human. Maybe he's tired sometimes, but it doesn't seem like it.
A lot of coffee.
Right. So Travis came, and the whole thing has really taken off since then, because he has so much verve and just an incredible networking spirit. So it has grown into this big and beautiful thing with a lot of arms, if you will, that we can tell you a little bit more about. Can y'all see my screen, I'm hoping? Okay, great. So what all is in here? We'll start with some of that. So you'll see right now we've got two sort of primary collections, but we are working on several expansions right now that we're super excited about. So the first thing, of course, was our oral histories. Oh, and before I forget to say, all of this is accessible to anybody. You don't have to be affiliated with Western in any way. We would love it if you come in and listen to some of these really, really amazingly interesting. It's wonderful to hear people's stories. So I'm just going to show you some of this. And we actually have a little clip of one to play for you that we thought might be interesting. So you'll see we have about 23 posted right now. And you can also, if you're interested, see over here some of our other oral history collections on the side: Cherokee, crafts, local crafts, Civil War. I mentioned African American, so there's a lot of interesting stuff in there if you want to hear some people's stories. And we've got a pretty good scope in terms of who all is represented in here at this point. There are about 23 posted, but we've got between 12 and 15 more that we have done that are in various stages of processing. And so we're getting pretty good reach. And then we've got a database of, I've lost track of how many people are on the database, 30 or 40 more people who want to be interviewed. So we're training interviewers and, working with people all the time. And who else in here? We have people all over the spectrum in terms of sexuality and gender: gay men, lesbians, people who are bisexual or pansexual. I just did my first interview 3 days ago with our first asexual interviewee. So I'm excited to get that posted, because that's a sort of different perspective. We have cisgender people, we have non-binary people, transgender people, gender fluid. So we're touching a lot of those different bases. And you can see on each one, it'll give you a little bit of a description, of sort of the main topics and identities covered in that particular interview. So you can come through. You may know some of these people too, I imagine. I've spoken with John Mealy, who's been around in the community a lot. Travis interviewed Caleb Lynch, also known as the Catman 2, or second Catman 2, I think, if that's correct. And we'll play a little clip of that in just a moment. And then in terms of where we're looking to go, I would love to get more sort of racial diversity and maybe start thinking about different relationship structures, We haven't touched on that a lot in the interviews, but of course, many people are monogamous and are in monogamous relationships. We also could look into people who are in polyamorous relationships or open relationships. So if you have any leads for us on either of those fronts, we'd be very excited to hear from you, and maybe touch base with some of those folks. And another thing that Travis is going to talk a little bit more about later is we've been working hard to make inroads with the Eastern Band of the Cherokee people so that we can get more of their stories in here represented, especially because for us, Western is on Cherokee lands. So it's very important for us as a community and as a university to honor the people sort of whose land this was, and make sure that their stories stay alive in this capacity. What else was I going to say? So we also, just to talk about some of the ties that we've made, we started off alone, and actually about the same time that I started collecting interviews, just sort of quietly in a small scale capacity, a professor named Amanda Ray over at UNC Asheville was starting a sort of really highly related project over there that was happening in conjunction, is happening in conjunction with Blue Ridge Pride. What other groups, Travis? Blue Ridge Pride and the YMCA over there.
I think that's pretty much it from over there. Blue Ridge Pride, YMCA, those are the two main two. Like we are sort of joined with Blue Ridge Pride in a lot of ways because of their, they have a lot of collection of oral histories as well too, which is probably what Sarah's going to talk about. But yeah, I think those are our two main ones.
Yeah, but they've been collecting a lot too. And everything that, well, not everything, most things that go into our archive are also going into theirs, so that we're making sure that these stories are getting as much reach as they possibly can. So the second part of this that we're pulling together is, in addition to the oral histories, is we're documenting various happenings and groups, LGBTQ plus groups that have existed as far back as we can find information on. So the first one that we put a lot of time into documenting was a group called Lavender Bridges, which was active in the 80s. It's been the first group that we've been able to find a lot of reference to, but we went through and one of our student workers, actually, we've used a lot of student workers in conjunction with this project, which has been amazing for us and hopefully for the students as well. But we, our student, Sarah Diarman, actually pulled about 50 articles from the Western Carolinian that were on Lavender Bridges. So you can come through and read documentation on that. And then there's beautiful kind of cross-pollination with the oral histories and Lavender Bridges and the various other groups in the region, because there actually have been several. There was also Out in the Mountains. That's one we're building documentation on. The Rainbow Room was something that happened on campus at Western. Also at Western, we've got the Sexuality and Gender Alliance, which they call SAGA, and a sort of beautiful training that has been around for, gosh, a long time. And I believe Michelle Cooper, who many of you may know because she's been here a long time, was involved in the formation of Safe Zone. So we're tracing all these things. We're looking for articles, documentation. So again, should you have knowledge of any of these things or documentation about any of these things, we would be very jazzed to hear from you. We'll make sure you have our contact information so you can reach out to us, because all of this stuff is of great interest on campus for students who are doing research in these areas. But also, like I said, these are coming up in Google searches for people all over the place. So they're of broad interest in the community, not just to people who are working in association with the university. So what I'm going to try and do now, just for a few minutes, is I'm going to try and play for you a little clip from one of our oral histories, okay?
Oh, 87, and I'm
Can you hear it?
I'm 33. I'll be 34.
Yeah.
I'm just different, I guess, and nothing wrong with that. But as far as like how I would describe myself, like I guess trans man would be a fine label for it. Definitely on the transmasculine spectrum, and on the queer / homo flexible sexuality spectrum. just sort of open to whatever. I think I kind of have a unique perspective because I live here, I work here, and I have been here since 2005. So I came up to Western for college and just decided I could never leave. But I transitioned while I was at Western and living in Jackson County, and that was a strange and interesting adventure. So at one time I went through and I started working at the local Walmart while I was in the middle of transitioning and right before I had surgery and all this stuff. And so one time I was going through the drive-through at Bojangles in Silva, and the lady at Bojangles said to me when I got to the window, "Ain't she the one that had the sex change?" And I was like, "Ain't you the one that's talking about something that ain't none of your business?" She's like, "Well, I was just wondering." So like it became a weird educational experience for a lot of people, just my existence being here, and living authentically was like something that a lot of people around here felt like they could just like ask me whatever, or that I was going to be like a Google search for them. So that was kind of crummy. But as far as everything else is concerned, I did have a fairly easy time at Western. I think I was sort of insulated by Western's more diverse environment, although they didn't really have much experience and didn't know what to do with me when it came to living in the dorms and stuff. So I ended up having to pay like $2,000 extra to live in a single, what was the graduate student dorm at that point. It was Madison, like a hotel style setup, which was kind of cool, but it was like away from everything else on campus and kind of isolating. But so that was an experience there. But most of the professors and working with people on campus, that was, I had no problems with them not using the right name and stuff. Like everybody was pretty cool about it. But then again, that is, like I said, the insulation of that more diverse community. So once you get started in town and you start branching out into the further areas of town, gets a little weird. I mean, I definitely had experiences, like negative experiences, where I felt very threatened and, not safe in Jackson County as a queer person. But I've also had experiences where, people have been really great. So, I mean, take the good and you take the bad. When I came up for orientation, I met a bunch of the people in Be Glad, and we called them the Gay Mafia at the time. But it's like, okay, these people are my new people. And for the next 4 years they were, and I'm still in touch with a lot of them. They also had a gay, bisexual, progressive men's fraternity called Delta Lambda Phi. And I was friends with most of them. I wasn't allowed to join at that point because back then it was very like cis-centric. So trans men weren't yet invited to be a part of it. But they had that. So that was, something that was there for support. They had the Rainbow Room, which was a group, kind of like group therapy or support group.
Can you hear me? Yeah, you can. Okay, thanks, Travis. Yeah, so I'm gonna stop this share. So that's just an example of one of them, and there are a few things that have really stood out to me. Travis, maybe you could comment on this too, having done a number of interviews, but it's heartening in a lot of ways to hear how things have changed with time, but in some ways it's not. Like thinking about just the issue of dorms on campus. is still really an issue for trans students. That's something that we're still sort of facing as an institution. And but yeah, it's we hope it's affirming in a lot of ways. Travis, did you want to add any thoughts?
Yeah, I think we're working on campus to resolve a lot of those issues too. I'm on the LGBTQ working group. I'm like on every queer group on campus, I feel like. But we're working to resolve increasing more diverse bathroom options and those types of things too. And there's actually hygiene products in the men's bathrooms in the union for trans folks as well too. Sarah, did you want me to go ahead and talk through like 202 and all that?
Let me do just the preamble for the Ames piece, and then we'll be ready.
Okay.
So we're gonna swap now, having talked about what all is in there. We're gonna talk a little bit about some of our aims and some of the lovely outcomes that have flowered from this, because it's gone in a lot of different directions. So we want to highlight, first of all, the educational component of this. And you heard Caleb kind of allude to it a little bit, but the fact that campus can be more inclusive, maybe more understanding of diverse voices. But as soon as you get off campus, it's a very different world. Even on campus, though, these are new issues for a lot of people. And one of the things that I really noticed, especially in speaking to younger people in these interviews, is there's absolutely represented almost universally this pervasive sense of non-belonging, of feeling different or weird, or there's an edge of fear and an edge of shame, different things of that nature that we really, really want to help people move away from. And of course, with the LGBTQ community, you see a lot of much higher rates than average of homelessness, of higher than average drug use or alcohol use, self-harm, or even suicide. So by sharing some of these stories, especially coming from this very rural environment, because New York City is a whole other world for a lot of these young people who are coming from this region, it's just tremendously helpful. And I've heard these stories from some people directly, and Travis, I think, has some ideas to share, or notes to share from Pride when we did that a little bit later. And we've also been able to integrate this into some classes on campus, and Travis was the lead on that, so he'll speak about some of those things.
So so Sarah started this big project with the drag performer oral histories. And so what my background is, I have been dealing with and working with LGBTQ archives since my graduate work at Louisville. They have a great archive there. I started an archive when I was at Indiana University East in Richmond, Indiana, which is like a rural Indiana. So that was an interesting place to start there too. So I came here, and I have become like the little Johnny Appleseed of queer archives. I think I just start them everywhere. So with this, we wrote a grant, an internal grant with Western, and got some money to do that. And one of the sort of perimeters, I guess, of that grant is that I actually had students in my second level writing course go out and collect for the archives. So some of them, interviewed folks in the area. John Wormuth, if you've been to Silva, he owns End of Maine, and my students conducted that interview. They interviewed friends, family, folks in the area, and it was a really great opportunity for them as students to contribute to the archive. And so that was really wonderful, and I got some really great feedback from that. And so it was sort of integral to it was sort of the whole point of the class, and that was during the pandemic too, which made it even crazier. But it went really well, and I got a lot of really good feedback from that. So we got the internal grant, then we applied for a Mellon grant, which we didn't get, but we'll apply again, which is like a big money grant. And with that, we would expand portions of the archive. We would do more community work, a lot more community work. And if you know, there are other archives, like I mentioned, with Louisville's and with Indiana University East. There's one at UNC Charlotte, and that's kind of where I got my idea from, to start one. Brian Bruford is the guy's name who started that, and it's a great work. He actually left Charlotte and went back to Mississippi to do one there. But kind of going back, and you'll see with his work too, he had a lot of community outreach. And that's one thing that I really wanted us to do with this archive, is to make a difference in the community, because I feel like students are so much in the Western bubble and don't get to Silva. And I'm like, it's literally 15 minutes down the road, if that. And so I encourage them to go do that. But with this work, during the pandemic, this group called the Silva Queer and Support Group started. And so they mentioned there was a bunch of young queer folks in there, and they wanted a pride. And so that's what really, because they did not feel included and scared in the community and didn't feel seen. So that's why I started the Silva Pride here. So that's a group. There's another group on the Cherokee boundary that is formed. And there's also Calliope Stage Company, which is very queer friendly. I had a piece in that, and they're a wonderful company. So just kind of in closing too, this is not something new. Like Sarah mentioned, the Lavender Bridges thing out in the mountains has been here since the 60s. If you know folks that have been in that, or if you've been included in that, it's a group that's been around forever. So one of our purposes of the archive and of the community work here is to sort of show what's happened, and that, you know, LGBTQ folks have been in these mountains for a long time. And they continue to be. And I think that's sort of the whole purpose of the work that we do here too, to show the history and to also record the history of it. So Sarah, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think that's great.
Cool. Thank y'all again for having us. And if you have any questions, do shoot us an email. I love to talk to people about this stuff, and I know that Sarah does too.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
can
also, I have y'all up on the screen, so you're kind of like the Wizard in the Wizard of Oz. That's why I'm looking up. So, but yeah, I just want to let you know about that. So thank y'all again for having us.
Thank you both. Oop, I have some echo. Hang on. All right, that sounds better. It's you? Okay. I want to thank you both for your message. I also want to talk a little bit about UUFF and its journey as a welcoming congregation, which really started in 2005, although it slowed down while the priorities were happening to build the sanctuary. We began in earnest with a study, education, and work in 2008, with an official vote to affirm as a welcoming committee or welcoming congregation in 2008. And by the end of 2009, we applied for and received the UUA certification. Besides an official nice letter from the UUA with this designation, our fellowship now has a rainbow flag by it. I tried this myself. As you search for the groups that are in our area at the association page. And it also enables our members at the annual conference, should they go, to wear a rainbow badge. And some groups even put a rainbow on their name tags. Although today, when we last talked about this, the idea of welcoming might perhaps need to be extended. Those folks who have gone through the LGBTQ issues have a question about what welcoming really means. And so we felt that some of them marginalized or underserved groups, not just LGBTQ committees, individuals, but should be included. But we are proud of the work that we had done in the 2008 for social justice. And we may indeed work again to update, because there's some updated work. Our justice efforts are grounded in this congregational driven social justice statements. And our call is to break down these divisions, heal isolation, honor the interconnectedness of all life and all justice issues. We model these commitments by creating just, welcoming, and inclusive congregations. And we hope to continue this partnership with the groups and organizations around our area, our nation, and our world. Now for the closing song. Jude? Very nice. I want to close we have some closing words here. Let me close the service today by sharing the rest of my philosophy, which seems to dovetail so much into what they are doing. And I'm so proud of the work that my library is doing in this area. But I want to talk about my philosophy of the importance of library, particularly academic libraries. Despite thousands of years of human progress and experience in education, learning new things is still hard work. A good life requires that a student that has to continually learn new things and learn new experiences. Good stories start with an unexpected choice, a challenge, a conflict, which the protagonist needs to pay attention to. Our hero or heroine must overcome difficulties with action and intent. Students new to learning and libraries sometimes have to learn about the whole discipline of how to learn all over again. Good libraries contain all levels of these fundamental tools and support their users at the novice and expert stages of their education. Great libraries provide a platform for sharing their experiences and sharing them with others. These libraries transcend their physical spaces as centers of the community of learning and provide these connections regardless of where in the world their patrons are located. Good stories often tell how the character is transformed through their challenges to start a new chapter in their life. Good libraries support and encourage the transformation of their users. The users need to believe that the sacrifices and efforts that they have gone through to educate themselves will pay off with a happy ending and a happy life. We want them to remember that the library is their partners in this journey, even after their formal education. Now, this is the kind of happy ending that I love, don't you? It is a great story that allows us to see our part in changing the world to make it a better place for all of us to live in. I also want to mention that I've been part of many of these groups on campus. And in fact, I wanted to show that I have a lesbian card that I shared around for many years. It says helping make lesbian connections. I wasn't doing what Sarah's doing, but I had a card about all the email lists and everything that I handed out at various groups that I attended. And so I am a card carrying, if you will. So that was always funny. So we extinguish this flame, but not the flame of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. When we are together, we circle around our round sanctuary and join hands in our closing circle and covenant. For now, we must hold hands in the sanctuary if we can, and in spirit with those on Zoom as we recite our covenant together. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and community is its goal. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So may it be.